Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Okay, so I'm just going to make a video on this. Finally back in the studio here after having to record a lot of these by phone. But I want to talk about what happened with this whole Rittenhouse verdict. I think a lot of people have talked about what has actually happened. To briefly recap, he was attacked. Should he have been there? No, I don't think so. I don't like the idea that a 17-year-old kid either took it upon himself, but apparently some people asked him to be there too, and I find that even worse. He's a kid, but no grown adult should have been asking him to come out there and defend their property. They weren't willing to take up a gun and defend themselves. I find that very pathetic, in my opinion. But obviously he came out, the verdict, not guilty, and if the justice system worked, there should have been no other verdict. Oh, I know that's not what Blue Checkmark Twitter says, but we'll get to that. Okay? That ain't what mainstream media says. Oh, but we're really going to get to that too. Okay? Start with this. They talked about this when Jimmy Dore talked about the situation. I myself have had my own encounters with this situation. The way mainstream media covered the Rittenhouse situation, most people did not know that the men that were shot when he was being attacked were not black. He was then labeled a white supremacist by the current president of the United States. Mainstream media of all channels, except for perhaps Fox News, and even some people on the Fox News network were labeling him a white supremacist as well. But definitely CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, NBC, anything you can come up with, TYT, they were all of them, calling this man, or kid at the time, teenager, a white supremacist. Guys, I know I'm just a southern dude. We're not interpreted as being the smartest of people. Some might call us dumb rednecks even. But seems to me, if you're a white supremacist and the only thing you like are white people and you don't like minorities, black people, Hispanic people, Asian people, Middle Eastern people, take your pick. Those are who you don't like. But you like white people, and the people you're shooting are white people. Seems to me like you got a little bit of a problem there. You must be really freaking dumb. Or colorblind. What the hell? I've never heard of white supremacists going around to hunt, per se, white people. I guess maybe you could split hairs and say that what happened with Nazi Germany and the Jewish people, but nah, he's not a white supremacist. Oh, by the way, they couldn't find anything in his search data about being something like a white supremacist or things he might have searched that would lead you to believe that, and they turned the phone over voluntarily because the FBI couldn't crack it and let them look through it. Couldn't find it. So what you have there is a very, very clear case of slander from mainstream media on this kid. He was set up to take a fall because it fit their narratives. We're coming back to that in a minute, okay? So they harp away at this thing, but the more things that come out in trial, it's obviously self-defense. Now, I know a lot of people don't like that because, oh, Black Lives Matter, we got to put the white guy away. There's some people who actually care about the idea of Black Lives Matter, as in we want true justice. There's other people who are just brain-dead, Democrat, Kool-Aid drinking morons who all they care about is getting whatever they can for free and demonizing the white people with critical race theory. Oh, and while we're at it, let's just lock people up behind bars whether they truly deserve it or not. Mainstream media told me this guy is bad, so put him in jail. They basically don't really want justice. Whether they think they do or not, what they're really doing is promoting ideas that are only going to lead to extreme racial division up to the point they're going to cause a race war. That's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to cause another civil war, and they're going to cause a race war. And if they finally reach that point, I hope they're very fucking proud of themselves when it happens. Especially mainstream media and these idiotic people in the Democrat Party who keep pushing it right along. Okay? Republicans are not that great either, by the way. But unfortunately, they were on, for the most part, the right side of this issue. No pun intended there. Okay? That being said, they slandered this kid to death. The evidence comes out. It was self-defense. And now, they've got new talking points. That if he was black, this wouldn't have turned out that way. I'm going to touch on that in just a second. But just to recap. This is how many lies they've told about this kid up to that point. He's a white supremacist. Can't find any clear evidence to back it up. Didn't he? They led you to believe white supremacist goes to Black Lives Matter rally and shoots people. So they led you to believe, without saying he shot black people, they led you to believe he shot black people. He shot no black people. And again, I say, I've had my own encounter with this. My sister-in-law, we were just talking about this at dinner, a family dinner this past Sunday. And my mother-in-law was talking about stuff going on, coming with the Christmas season and prices and this and that. And I said, you need to start watching what could happen in this coming week because of the Rittenhouse verdict. I got a feeling there's going to be some unrest. And my brother-in-law follows politics almost like I follow hockey games, which is basically never. Okay? And he was like, what is that? So my sister-in-law starts to explain it to him. He's like, white guy goes to protest, shoots black people, and me and my mother-in-law were both like, no, he did not. Already. This is the casual person who does not follow this all the time. 9 times out of 10 probably believes he shot black people. That is a complete fucking lie. It is a lie. He did not shoot one black person. The whole situation started because some cops shot a guy who was trying to resist arrest and flee the police after a domestic dispute, basically stealing his ex-girlfriend or ex-wife's car. Oh, and by the way, he didn't die. Okay, unlike most of these others that have sparked such outrage, he didn't die. He was shot, sure. He didn't die. Okay, but that's another issue. But yeah, the casual person is like, oh, I was reading this on Reddit. So now you get where a lot of people are getting their information from. Chat rooms, and the chat rooms where the people who are spreading this are probably getting their stuff from, if they didn't get it from another chat room or social media themselves, would be mainstream media. Again, they didn't say he shot black people. The way they framed it leads you to believe that he did. It is a lie from the authoritative news sources. They're being very deceptive and in a way promoting what some would consider misinformation. They will not report on the facts as they should be reported on, because if they did report on those facts, that'd be a problem. Oh, and by the way, this is not the white supremacy sign. So anyone who thinks that's what I'm doing right now, no, I'm not. Okay? So that being said, they misreport on that. So lie number 1, he's a white supremacist. Lie number 2, they basically lead you to believe that he shot black people without saying it. He did not. Then they get around to he came across state lines with the gun. The gun was in Kenosha, Wisconsin. To cross the state line from his mother's house was 1 mile through the Wisconsin state line. Kenosha, Wisconsin was only 20 to 30 minutes away. He had family members living there. They framed it to make you believe this kid had absolutely no business in that town whatsoever. They led you to believe he had about as much business in that town as I have in New York City. I don't know anyone personally in New York City. No family, no friends, no acquaintances, nothing. So if I went there, I would be nothing but a pure visitor. I've got no attachments to that city whatsoever. They led you to believe that was the case with him. It's another lie. He had, or deception, if lie isn't the best way to describe it. It's another deception. He had business in that town. He also didn't just go there for the protests. Earlier in the day, he could be found cleaning graffiti off of buildings. He had a gun. Again, as I said, I don't think he should have been doing this, but he was there. He was attacked. He defended himself. That all came out in court. But of course, mainstream media ain't going to cover things that way. They have used this deceptive journalism, if you can even call it journalism. I think you get more news out of tabloids at this point than you do from actual news. That's terrifying and it's pathetic. But probably some truth to it. Okay? And these are the people that, by the way, when YouTube want to censor this channel or censor many other great political commentary channels or even independent news channels, they want to censor the Gray Zone. They want to censor, Nico House, Frank Analysis, Steve Poikonen, Slow News Day, Radical Independent, The Naturalist Capitalist, Stacy for Truth, Coffee and Nuance. All of whom, by the way, those last few members of the TFP network. Make sure you go subscribe over there. Okay? All these people, great content creators. And I'm sure I left some people out, so if someone watches this and you've been with the channel before and I didn't mention you, don't take any offense to it, but, trying to just move along here. But there's many great smaller content creators out there, and even some bigger ones, but aren't that big. We're all getting our stuff whittled down to nothing because of censorship. Because we are not authoritative news sources. They consider the people who have been giving you nothing but deception up to this point. While they've got a war on misinformation, they're promoting nothing but the biggest perpetrators of misinformation. The same people who swore up and down that all ivermectin was a horse pill or horse paste or horse medicine or whatever. Turns out there's a human form of it they prescribe all the time. Now I'm on YouTube, so I'm not going to go into what my thoughts are truly about what it can and can't do. We all know what they'll do for that. But this was a freaking lie. It is a lie. Lies and deception from the people that the tech overlords like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter all say are the trusted people you should listen to for your news. That people like us, we're just people running our mouth with a microphone and a computer and a camera and maybe some kind of a setup behind us. But we're not authoritative. We don't verify our information. It's not fact check. It's all opinion pieces like half of mainstream media isn't. So you can't trust us. Go listen to them and trust them. And that's bullshit. So they come out with just deception after deception, lie after lie about this kid. And the evidence was still so overwhelming. In spite of, people on that jury were like, God, we know how, what a publicity stunt this is. And if we don't convict this guy, hell, they could burn the town down. But good God, this was self-defense. We can't just send this guy to jail. But it's in the back of their mind, if he doesn't go to jail, good Lord, we saw what happened before he did this. Now you've got celebrity blue checkmark Twitter and politicians and the news all, he's a racist white supremacist and he needs to go to prison. So if we don't do that, What are they going to do to our town next? That's what they're doing. They had to be thinking about that. But even still, they were able to convince everyone on that jury after a few days of deliberation. They all band together. It was self-defense. We can't put this kid in jail for something he just didn't do. So they acquitted him. And then, of course, everyone, mainstream media, they're clutching their pearls. Blue checkmark Twitter. The justice system doesn't work. It's a system built on racism, and it's still promoting racism, and it just sucks. It's full. Oh my God, these people are so full of shit. No, this is proof the justice system does work. One of the few people on blue checkmark Twitter who had the guts to come out and acknowledge that was Tulsi Gabbard. So credit to Tulsi Gabbard. Absolutely, 110%. Okay? This was clear cut evidence that the justice system does work. Because in spite of a public pressure campaign, in spite of a smear and slander campaign, and in spite of a lot, and some might say this is a public pressure campaign, but a lot of Hollywood celebrities and politicians and Black Lives Matter activists and all these people basically just hounding and fussing and posting all the time how he needs to be in jail. The judge allowed a fair trial, which they tried to say, oh, the judge was racist and he's this and he's that and he was prejudiced, and he was appointed by a Democrat. The party you people think is the better of the two. That's who appointed him. Now what the judge just allowed was truth to come out. He didn't allow the rules to be broken in his court. He didn't allow the jury to be followed and harassed. The judge allowed an actual fair trial. This is the justice system working in the way that it should. Sorry, it is. But of course, people who didn't get their outcome, oh, it's a broken justice system. Been broken if he went to jail for something he didn't do, which is what mainstream media want everybody to believe. And again, the biggest of them all are the amount of people that don't even know the people he shot were not black people. That's what's just embarrassing here. But now there's the new narrative. Said I was coming back to it. That if he were to have been a black man or a black teenager that did that, been a different outcome. That is speculation. That is speculation. It is nothing but pure speculation. That is not factual. That is not fact-based. That is an opinion and nothing more. You are supposed to be a trusted news source. Shut the fuck up with that bullshit. You are doing nothing but fanning more flames. Some could make the argument because of the amount of black people who've been shot by the cops, he probably would have either been convicted and sent to prison or he would have been shot that night and killed. Some could argue that. But you don't know for sure what would have happened. Because I will argue two things, and this is my point I made not long ago about why more and more, even if you do believe Mark Dice is a nut and a conspiracy theorist, then I don't think he has everything right. I agree with him on some things. But there's a lot of other things I disagree with Mark Dice on. But you make this guy sound like a prophet. You make him seem far more credible than some would even think he should be, simply because you make him right so often. As he pointed out, a couple of cases, Timothy Simpkins from Arlington, Texas, brought a gun to school, got in a fight with a kid. Now, this is at a school. They talk about these school shootings. The Democrats harp up and down if it were to be the white kid that goes to school and winds up shooting someone. Oh, it's a massive school shooting. Oh, we got to have gun reform. They won't shut up. But for the first time, it started making news that it wasn't the white kid who did it. Again, this just shows how they're trying to promote racial division. It shouldn't matter what color the kid was. If he brought a freaking gun to school and one makes news, the rest of them should too. But that ain't how they want to handle it. That ain't how they want to handle it, because one fits their narratives, stirs the flames, and will sell and get clicks. The other, not so much. Doesn't fit their narrative. It's counterproductive to what they've been trying to lead you to believe. So we're not going to talk about that one. But he got in an altercation. He shot another kid, shot the teacher, and grazed the girl. He got out on like $250,000 bail. I don't even think was fully a charge with attempted murder, but he might have been, but I don't think so. But either way, online started rushing to this kid's defense. It was a matter of bullying, and he was being bullied, and he had no other choice. And the chief of police, who is another black man, had to come out and literally correct that and say, this was not a case of bullying. This kid was involved in some very risky activity, which leads you to think one of a couple things. He didn't go into full detail there, but you can kind of put two and two together what he's getting at when he says that. Okay? They don't talk about what this guy's doing. No. That ain't really going to be talked about all that much, and it certainly ain't going to be talked about for the same length of time. There's another one. I forget this guy's name entirely, but apparently he was caught up in a drug raid at his father's house, which was a known drug house. Police raided. He fired shots at cops in the process. His girlfriend was killed in the process, and it's unclear if one of his bullets killed her or one of the cops' bullets killed her, but he claimed self-defense for shooting at the police in the middle of a raid and was acquitted for the murder of that girl, and was let off saying it basically, it was self-defense. He shot at the cops in a drug raid and was acquitted with self-defense. So this argument that if he was black, it would have been a completely different story, that there's no solid evidence to back that claim up. Could have been the way you say, could have been the way those situations were. Another theory is because it don't fit the narratives, it wouldn't have been covered as much by mainstream media. There wouldn't have been as much of an effort to potentially crowdfund and support that guy had he been black, because they wouldn't be talking about it. So then if he didn't have the right of money to afford the proper attorneys, well then maybe if he didn't have a good a lawyer arguing for him like Rittenhouse did, then obviously yes, that could have swayed the verdict one way or the other. But that ain't the fault of a justice system per se. I mean, you got to have a good enough lawyer, and unfortunately you could say, well, that is a problem, because if you can't afford a good enough lawyer, then then you might be sent to jail where somebody else could get let off. So maybe there is an issue there. But the bigger issue is they wouldn't be covered by the media. The only reason Rittenhouse probably got all the support he had is because of the coverage of the media. So if the media's got a problem with the Rittenhouse situation, you covered this whole thing deceptively, and you running your mouth, the same reason Trump got as much attention as he got. A lot of people credit your coverage of him, free promotional stuff, basically, why he got elected. Guess what? Probably the same thing there. You constantly talking about him and bullshitting led a lot of people to believe you were demonizing this kid for no damn good reason. And because of that, he needed support, and he got it. So if you'd kept your mouth shut if it didn't fit your crooked narratives, then yes, there could have been a different result. But now we get around to another issue lately that they're probably going to do just that very same thing with, also happening in Wisconsin, which is this recent attack at this Christmas parade. So you get this guy, Darryl Brooks, okay? He takes a red Ford SUV, plows through barricades, takes out crowds full of people, kills a few, injures dozens, right? I know last I heard he killed at least 5, maybe even up to 8, but many more were at the very least injured in the process. So just from this right here alone, okay, we're talking about more people dead than the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. We're talking about a lot more people injured than what Kyle did with an AR-15 at that incident in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Oh, by the way, this is also taking place in Wisconsin, not Kenosha, but in Wisconsin. And they're talking about it, but it's like they're starting to try to hunt for reasons why he might have done what it is that he did. Now they're like, oh, well, he was running from the police. He had been in a domestic dispute. He was fleeing the police, as if that's a valid excuse to do what he did. He's been charged with so many counts of attempted homicide, okay? But here's the point that I want to make. This is opinion, okay? No different than the opinion you're going to get from watching mainstream media, except theirs is going to be more dishonest, deceitful, and be full of deception, okay? But this is an opinion about what the mainstream media is going to do. Even though more people are now dead, even though a lot more people were injured as a result of what this guy did, which clearly he did intentionally, okay? I guarantee you it won't be talked about the same way the Rittenhouse situation was. And why? Oh, because the Rittenhouse situation was white supremacy? Again, it was a white guy that shot white people. They have been so deceptive about this situation that even people like Glenn Greenwald have pointed out that actual reputable journalists in other countries who are just following the headlines from the U.S. have reported that he shot black people. And that's not true. Never happened. Never happened. Never shot at a black person. And there were people of all shades of races and colors in Kenosha, Wisconsin that day. He didn't shoot at them. He shot at white people who were attacking him. That scenario, what happened right there, was talked about for a year, was lied about and demonized on the mainstream media. And I don't want them to make up stuff about Darryl Brooks, because that's part of the problem. Even though what he did is heinous, I'm not out there going to say whatever you got to say to get this guy a life sentence. I don't know. Report the truth. Let the truth have its day. Let a court of law decide whether he should be guilty or not. But they're not going to demonize him the same way that they have the Rittenhouse situation. The other thing they're not going to do is just not going to talk about it at all, the way they've talked about the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. Now, you can disagree with me on that, but I think time will tell which side was correct here. Maybe they will talk about this for a year. Maybe there will be cameras in the courtroom. Maybe this will be front page news for the next year. I don't think so. I'm pretty confident that isn't going to happen. And my opinion on why it isn't going to happen is because it doesn't fit the bill, doesn't fit the narrative that mainstream media wants to push for clicks and hot topics. Because the hot topic right now, that they, by the way, have been fueling on, the hot topic is not tragedies of death, even though that does seem to be linked to a lot of their hot topics. No, the hot topic is the tragedy that involves something that helps fuel the race war. And that doesn't help fuel the race war. That story makes it seem like there's just bad people that are killing people on both sides of the aisle. But if it were the white person that did that, and guys, I hate to do this because I know people, the white people can't do nothing wrong. That's what this guy in the cowboy hat said. That's not what I'm saying at all. There's white people that do stupid, ridiculous, and even evil things all the time. But it isn't just a white person's problem. It isn't just something that only us white people do. This is taking place all over the place. Those with common sense realize that. But the mainstream media only wants to talk about it. Why? Because white people make up the majority of the country. So they're literally trying to start a race war. And if they do get a race war started, then that's even more crap for them to talk about. And the more white people actually push back against this sort of bullshit narrative that it's just us as these evil people, the more we take a stand or push back or defend our own selves, the more they then try to claim that we're some white supremacists. Because why? We don't want to get clobbered in the head with a goddamn skateboard? Because we don't like people pointing a gun in our own face? They'll harp on that shit and slander the fuck out of somebody like me if it were to be me that did something like that. They would do that for a whole year, but they will not cover this guy more than 1 month tops. The next time he might be mentioned would be if he gets a verdict. But I will tell you now, if I'm wrong about this, I will be the first person to admit it. I will come out here on my own show and say I was dead ass wrong and this is actually a step in the right direction. And kudos to the mainstream media for doing the right thing if they actually cover this the same way they did the Rittenhouse situation. But I'll guarantee you they won't. And there's probably going to be some Kool-Aid drinking shit libs out there who go, well, it ain't the same situation. He didn't intentionally try to kill people. It just happened because he ran in a parade. I would say that's intentionally trying to kill him. He didn't carry a gun. This was a hate crime. A hate crime. White guys shooting other white guys when there were many other people around. Yeah, okay. So again, there's probably going to be some shit libs who would disagree with what I've said, try to argue their own points, but anyone that actually is open to hearing a different side of things and is actually an open-minded thinker that can look at the facts as they are and come to a conclusion is going to realize there's obviously a bias there. You might not agree with me at the end of the day, even if you were a free thinker, on why that bias exists. But any person that can think critically, and I'm not talking critical race theory, I'm talking critical thinking for themselves, will realize there's a problem here. There's a problem here, and that there's a bias in the media. Now, why it's there, we could debate. But anyone with any common sense can look at this and see they're picking and choosing which one they want to harp about and make a big deal about. And the way they cover things affects how people think about it. Even when the evidence is so overwhelming this guy is innocent, people are going to demonize him for the rest of his life because of what mainstream media said. Jimmy Dore brought a guy on. I forget his first name, but he's a YouTuber himself. He's an ex-cop. Last name is Nixon. I know. I think his first name starts with a G. I just don't remember it off the top of my head. But he brought that guy on, and they were talking about you know that very thing. Like when you start telling people the facts, they just get this real defense that they don't like what you're telling them because they've been convinced he's an evil bad guy. You start, well, no. They won't accept the truth. They just don't want to hear it. And it's sad people are that way, but they are. I think to some extent, maybe that's in a little bit of all of us, maybe. I don't know. But that shows you how much of a threat the mainstream media could be. Whether it be the fact that they're not going to report on this issue with the Christmas parade and the Darryl Brooks situation. The other gentleman that I think I referenced already earlier in this video that they refused to talk about. The one that actually shot at police in self-defense and was acquitted for it in Florida. He shot at the police in a drug raid. Black man shot at the police. So this argument, this is what I'm saying, this is cherry picking for the mainstream media to say now if he was black, it would have been a different outcome. Could have been a different outcome. That could also be for a variety of reasons other than the color of his skin. But someone who wants to argue there would be no different outcome could also pull the fact this other man aside, from Simpkins, was Andrew Coffey IV. Okay? He was cleared of a murder charge. He shot at cops in the middle of a drug raid. The crossfire killed his girlfriend. He claimed self-defense for shooting at the cops in a drug raid and was acquitted. And he was a black man. So this race card way of looking at this shit is giving us nothing. It's furthering nothing. It's doing nothing but causing more problems. And even if you don't mean to try to fuel the flames of a race war, if you're making those claims that way, when there is evidence to the contrary, you're only going to be angering certain people who are tired of hearing this black versus white narrative all the fucking time. It's really getting old. It's really getting old. Because while all I hear in the world around me is how my kind and their kind don't get along, basically, and my kind is constantly oppressing their kind, to use it that way. I'm using those words on purpose. That's not how I feel. That's how they describe this shit. That's how the mainstream media basically describes it. And while I constantly hear that in my own personal life, all I look around and see are people around me of all different colors, but in particular, I've got a whole lot of people who are black. Black men and black women who are honestly some of my most closest friends. Two of them right now I almost consider close enough that I would almost consider them family. The only thing stopping that would just be the fact we're not blood related or even marital related, but to me, that they have a meaning towards me that I would consider them basically like my family. I have a lot of respect for them. I think they're wonderful people. Oh, and by the way, they probably don't agree with me politically on a lot of things either. That doesn't make a difference. That makes no difference to me. The fact that they've probably voted Democrat for a very long time, I know at least one of them has. I know one was a huge Obama supporter. Does that bother me? No. When I disagree with it, sure. But as a person, I love them. But you wouldn't believe shit like that listening to the mainstream media. If what the mainstream media said was actually the case, somebody like me, who's wearing a damn cowboy hat with a heavy country accent and is very white, shouldn't have those sort of relationships, basically, because they just want that racial divide to exist. So what I challenge people to do is stop listening to what mainstream media is telling you is fucking reality and start looking out into the world yourself. Open your own eyes and start seeing what the real reality is in the world that's actually around you. Because what you'll probably find out when you get there is that the world around you actually looks a whole lot fucking better when you stop listening to these paid talking fucking heads who want to do nothing but separate us and divide us to keep the status quo in power, to keep you ill-informed so the status quo stays in power, and to divide us further and further so that we fight amongst ourselves while they continue to reap the rewards of being in power and we continue to reap the sorrows of being in poverty and being in chaos. That's what they fucking want. Because if we all started figuring out how corrupt both sides were and started really doing something about it together, they know they're in trouble. So they lie. They lie and they intentionally try to keep you ill-informed, and they will demonize someone like me and many others on YouTube as being pushers of misinformation. That's what we do. We push misinformation according to them. Meanwhile, all they do is come out with one deception after another, which is a disgrace. So that's my thoughts on this. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that thumbs up button below, assuming they let me even keep this thing up on YouTube. You never know these days. Drop the comments in the comment box down below. And if you're not subscribed to the channel and you just found the channel, make sure you subscribe if you liked the video. We'll see you next time right here on the Lone Wolf Podcast. Take care, everyone.